Good morning, everybody. Welcome to my channel, and today kind of is a sad one for me because this the death of IVD's wife out of domestic violence. So her story is not really the first story. It's not the second story. It's not the last one. Look at Osinachi. I'm always of the opinion that you cannot make something that doesn't want to work. If you're in a relationship, it's not a do or die affair. If it gets violent, emotional abuse, physical abuse, please leave the marriage. I think one of the problems that comes with people, women, or to an extent men, staying in an abusive relationship, no, scratch out. Men are not even part of this equation. I'm talking about the women. Reason why women stay in abusive relationships is because of what the society would say. To an extent, when you're getting married, I'm not married though, but they will tell you, as you're leaving my house, don't come back. Now it's a modern thing. So I wrote down some pointers. So I'm going to be, referring to my notes to ground my thoughts on this. So I kind of went through Daddy Freeze's life on this subject matter. So I got a comment that made sense to me, so I'm going to say it out. So he said we need to eradicate. I'm going to post it here so you can always see. He said we need to eradicate this cultural belief that once you give your daughter out in marriage, she cannot come back to your house again because the way the society views a woman that left her marriage. Now, our society, the Igbo ancestral society, never have this kind of conception or have this kind of perception towards marriage and relationship. To them, as my daughter, you don't want to marry again, it's okay. A woman has a potential, or a woman can marry more than 2-3 men in her lifetime. So when people say divorce is un-African, that's not true. They can return the bride price, agba anokwayem. So once they do that, they will dissolve the marriage. And she's also likely to get married to another man. So when we are being deceived, I think it's a mix of colonialism, it's a mix of cultural diffusionism that actually projected us to have this perception of women not be able to go back to their parents' house, their parents' house, because of what people would say. The mothers, the fathers, the relatives, the aunties, the cousins, that fear makes women to stay back in marriage. So I think we need to start changing this narrative. Now, I'm going to be talking about other culture because I feel there is this thing about cherry picking that we have. People are fond of picking what makes sense to them without trying to get the full picture. There is this Igbo adage that they will tell you that umuada budia. Now, that adage is very beautiful without the condescending tone that comes with it. When they look at it, they say umuada budia. To an extent, it's not that you don't have self-respect when you're not married. This is because our ancestors feel that a woman cannot inherit properties from her father, but then she can actually own properties or land through her husband. So in order for her to have this posterity, in order for her to have all these things, she needs to marry, because the mother is already in the father's house benefiting for umuada genwetem. Now, the same thing that they say, they also forget this adage that says, Ozumuada anaya atonamba. Chimamanda once said that, changing of name, surname, it's not an African thing, and they wanted to eat her and all those things, but she's actually right. Women don't lose their identity when they get married. As a married woman, you don't lose your identity. Makifi jerebu EJD. We call marriage EJD, which means if you go somewhere, you would always return. That's why they bury women in their father's compound and not their husband's compound. Now, this might sound strange to people. So if you doubt me or you think I'm not saying anything that makes sense, you can always go back and ask. Don't come and say you don't know what you're saying. Just go back and ask. Originally, or ab initio, women are not buried in their husband's house. Now, if you look at how women are being buried now, after the whole burial ceremony, they would give the girl's parents or the girl's family, if they will give them unyewu or a female cow, depending on your financial capability. Now, what is that trying to tell you? It's a symbolism to the initial thing that was being practiced. Now, in places like Nnewi now, they bury this woman in 2 places. They will bury you simultaneously. They bury you in your father's compound. They're also burying you in your husband's compound, especially for people that are living in close proximity. This is the ancient Igbo cultural practice. Now, recently, what they now do is after the burial in the evening, the father's people will now move and go to the husband's people's place. Now, before they enter there, they are going to do umuada. They will signify the woman abiago. Now they would give them whatever they will come with, do the normal rites. Now when they are now about to go back home, once they get to the gate of the entrance of the father's compound, what they will also do a rite there that would also signify. They also shoot a gun monani again to signify that the woman's spirit, the woman's essence, has come back or returned to her father's house. Now, instead of the initial culture that they do, where they bury the woman body and everything in the father's compound, they now kind of put these symbolisms intact that is actually representing the main thing that our ancestors practiced. Now, once they are done doing that, there are also rites that are going to do umuada, that are going to also do their own. So these are just rites. I think equals umuada. These are rights. This is where they can say ozunwada anoya tonamba. Even if it is the same in the same village, the same community, they would have to perform these rites. That's to show you how Igbo women were respected in their husband's house. Now, I've talked about divorce, where a woman is allowed to marry as much as, this situation is not suiting you. Oh yeah, you go back to your father's house. And the parents are going to accept this person, this woman, with open heart and love. That's why we don't have anything like bastards in our cosmology or culture. When a woman gets pregnant out of wedlock, the owner of that child becomes the girl's father, especially if a merego. So when we talk about bastard is not something we use. That we don't have anything like bastard. And if that child is going to inherit anything, the child will inherit things from the girl's father. This is culture. Now, there has been a mix of colonialism that has now made us to think that women are being owned, subjugated, and the rest of it, leading to making women to lose themselves. We talk about self-esteem, self-identity. Most women don't have it because of the narrative that has been filled our mind and socialized us into. Now, another point that I wrote down here, I've talked about changing of surname not being an Igbo thing. I've also talked about burying a woman in her father's house, being subjugating it for cows and goats. Now, let's talk about the functions of umuada. There is no way in Igbo ancient society where we have these people like umuada and umuobo, and a woman would be beaten every single day in her husband's house. That's an abomination. Because the women there, they are a form of a socio-political organization that are there to protect the interest of the woman. So there is this cultural practice, ime ego otare. As you're doing the ime ego, you're also doing ime ego otare. What is this thing trying to tell you? In case you touch our daughter, we are going to hire people with this to come and flog you or to come and beat you. So it makes these men to be wary, to be respectful. I'm not saying that women don't have issues or everybody, but you don't touch your wife. There are institutions that are how to handle these things. But domestic violence is not our culture. Now, another function of umuada is to perform what we call inodunwoke ananisi. This is in relative to domestic violence. When a man beats his wife recklessly, the women in the community would gather round and move to the man's house. They are angry, they are vibrating, they are with weapons, shouting or screaming at the man to understand why he's going to touch his wife. Why would you do this thing to your wife? These are practices, these are checks and balances that they put in place to protect the interest of everybody. The umuna stands to protect the interest of the men. Umuada starts to protect the interest of the men. Now I'm now asking, in this modern generation, where are they? It's not proper to hear these things about women being killed in their husband's house or domestic violence that leads to mortality. Where are the family members? So, civilization has made it that most of us are now living very much apart from our family units. But the family should also be held accountable in these situations, because they are the people that are meant to call every party to order. If you guys are not going to live again, oh yeah, separate. It's okay. So if we keep having this narrative that women are trying to be, so okay, let's look at what to look at as umuada. Now it's a spiritual kind of problem that is being caused by women. Maybe she got married in another community, she got married somewhere, and somehow the husband maltreated her and she dies. Her spirit will torment her family members. Or a woman or a person that was used for sacrifice in those days. When you go to Afa will say, that's if it's going to reveal itself, because most of all those things are very tricky. It would appear to be amosu, it would appear to be something else, but it's umuada. Now, how is it now? It's going to affect the male, the male aspect part of the family. She will torment them. She can even appear to be an obanje, child mortality in that family. Until the family thinks and fixes this problem, she's going to torment them. So in this IVD's marriage, like I saw the clips, the marriage was toxic. So the question is, where were the family? The woman's family, the man's family, what did they do? They might have done something, but I feel that they should have done more than they did. So concerning what this man wrote, we need to eradicate the cultural blah 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 in all those things. We need to understand that a woman going back to her father's house after marriage is the proper thing to do. In our Igbo Asian society, it's not something of disdain, it's not something of mockery. Family. So we need to understand these things. To save a life, we need to start changing this narrative to make women and the society at large to understand that because of the colonial mixture with our culture, we've actually lost a lot of things. And for some reason, we are holding on tight to this stereotyped society that we don't want to move or change the impressions or what we think that is our culture. So this is one of the essence of my YouTube and my page, trying to correct the narrative. Like I said before, I do research, I go to the village and I meet people and I talk to them. I don't want to go deep. I could have said, let me talk about polygamy and the ancestral perception of polygamy, because what most young men in this generation think about polygamy, they see it as an avenue for sex, forgetting that marriage was done as a function. Now, what function are they trying to talk about? They're talking about procreation. That's why we have women to woman marriage. We have surrogate marriage. Even, I think, lady right, I think. Now, woman to woman marriage, these women are not really intimate with one another. But the more purpose there is for procreation. We even have another one, umuada. The family will decide, okay, this your father did not have a son. Why don't you stay back and procreate? So the essence of marriage is not sex. It's actually, oh God, it's actually for procreation. So we need to start changing these narratives. We need to start changing this narrative to preserve the life of women and the life of men. Because in this IVD situation, he's also going to have a tough, because they're going to have an investigation, and he's going to lose friends, business, and the rest of it. And he would likely to end up in jail or prison if he's convicted of this crime. So we need to start changing this narrative. And everybody, man, woman, children, whoever you are, try to take care of yourself. So I'm going to end this video here. And until next time, yeah, guys.